Welcome back to Dog Health News. I'm Roberta Chadis, and I couldn't be happier today because I have the best guests ever. I have Skippy and my very dear friend Jim Trick. Welcome to Dog Health News.
Thanks, Roberta.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
And we've been spending a little bit of time together, getting to know each other. You want to come over here, Skippy? And I now have a new best friend.
Yeah, Skippy approves of you. He's a fan.
He really is.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to start off with for our audience
Yeah.
is a little bit of a background of who you are. How did you get that crazy name, Jim Trick?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And we all want to know about Skippy.
Yeah. So as you said, my name is Jim Trick, and middle school was terrible. I've grown into the name Trick. And I was raised in beautiful Haverhill, Massachusetts, and live in Marblehead now. I work as a performing songwriter, a speaker, and life coach. And we'll probably unpack some of those things as we spend time together. But Skippy's story, that's you. That's you. This is your story. Skippy, this is your life.
How do you like that?
He likes it. So we've had Skippy for about 9 months, and when we met him, he was at the Northeast Animal Shelter, had just gotten in, and hadn't even made it to their website yet. And his backstory was that he was a stray living on the streets of California, and his name was Drago when he was out there. And,
I think I read about him.
Did you? Yeah, you
No.
may have it. So he was a street dog, and he was brought in by a shelter. Apparently, in other parts of the country, many shelters are very high kill, including California, very high kill rate for their shelters. Which I think it's funny that you would call it a shelter and have it be a high kill rate.
I know.
Right? There's an irony there. But they put him on they gave him an operation that I don't know how thrilled he was about it, but they put him on a truck, and they changed his name on the truck from Drago to Marcus. And then when he got to Salem, Massachusetts, he was in his little cage, and we walked in and just fell in love with him immediately. And he just looks like Skippy to us. and he doesn't look like a Drago to me, is like a big pit bull. And Marcus is a little bit benign. No offense to the Marcuses of the world, or the Dragos for that matter. But he just looked like he embodied the name Skippy.
Well, he's very nimble. I noticed.
He's nimble. He's nimble and quick.
In the studio here.
And he's just a great dog. You know, our beloved Frisquita that we had for over a decade was a little dog like Skippy, but she had a profound Napoleon complex, and she was just a nightmare with other dogs and other people. And Skippy just loves everybody.
Yes, I noticed that today.
Yeah.
And I hope to see more of Skippy because we are like in love here.
Yeah.
This
he's
is
good.
a great, quiet dog, no barking. But I also know, you told me that he was part something else.
Yeah, so he's part Chihuahua, and he's part miniature pincer, which they call a min pin. And so I guess if they could mix those consistently, we would come out with lots of Skippies, though I can't imagine there being a dog that's more agreeable than this little guy.
This is a sweetheart.
He's my
I know.
best man.
Look
Yeah.
how at home.
Yeah, he's very chill.
And what has Skippy brought to your life?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, we talk about, you hear the sort of cliche that people, when they talk about rescuing dogs, that the dog rescued them. And I think that there's truth to that. I think that anytime God gives you the opportunity to care for something, that it's mutually edifying. So where our role is to care for him and to make sure that he has what he needs, what he provides in return is just such joy. And he's, the joke is, why do guys have dogs?
Right.
So that someone's happy to see them when they come home at the end of the day. I mean, if you're gone for 10 minutes and you come back, he's pleased as punch, and just won't do anything without saying hello first. If we're leaving for the day, we kiss him goodbye and tell him to be nice. And
how can you even leave this dog?
Oh,
I
know. But yeah.
But I know that you also do. You're a coach.
Yeah.
And having one myself, I know how important that is.
Yeah.
And I also love to hear about how you got into the business of coaching.
Yeah.
Because it's not an easy job at all. I had an he's an accountability coach and a business coach. And now I have eliminated the excuses in my life.
Wow. Good for you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
great. So the path to coaching for me, I spent most of my life morbidly obese. I was 430 pounds at my largest. So 12 years ago, I wouldn't have fit in this chair. I would have actually walked in, seen this chair, and had anxiety over it. 430 pounds, I wore a size 64 pant. And the first time I flew to England to meet my in-laws, for example, I had to buy 2 plane seats.
Oh.
Yeah. And yet, I've had a microphone and an audience for the last 20 years. And so even though I was really large, I still was able to have a voice where I spoke into the lives of some different people. But coaching was really intriguing to me. The truth of the matter is that most people don't really want a 430-pound life coach. And so I feel like I had this piece of my life that was so wildly out of control. So 12 years ago, I had gastric bypass surgery. I wound up regaining most of the weight because my head and my heart hadn't changed. And more importantly, what hadn't changed was my motivation. I hadn't found my motivation. And so a few years ago, a dear friend of mine, my friend Gina Blaze, I had come off stage after playing at an event up in New Hampshire called Soulfest. And she said, I'd like to speak with you. And I said, sure. And what she didn't know was that over the 3 weeks prior to running into her at this event, I had said to myself, I really want to get serious about pursuing coaching, becoming a coach. And at the same time, I felt like I was ready to get back on that bike. Because for your viewers who are struggling with weight or struggling with anything that's like that, what I found and what I hear from a lot of people is that you try over and over and over again, and then the idea of getting back on that bike, right, getting back in that process of trying to change is so painful because you failed so many times before at so many different things. So basically what Gina did, and I thought that she was coming to me because she wanted to talk about the stuff that was going on with her, but she actually confronted me about my weight.
Oh, how did that feel?
It felt initially uncomfortable, and yet when somebody comes to you and you know they have your best interest at heart, and her opening line was this: Jim, 3 weeks ago I saw a film called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about you.
Oh, lovely.
And I looked at her and I said, well, Gina, nice to see you too. And she said, no, seriously. And basically what she did was she outlined some things in my life, and she said this, pointing at my gigantic stomach, said, this is keeping you from being who you are, and we need you to be who you are. And it was really beautiful and very courageous of her. And so, of course, in that moment, what are my options, right? I can cry baby, and I can do what we do, which is to say things like, well, what about your stuff, you know?
Right.
Instead of just saying, this is a moment in time when there's a perfect storm of things happening that could potentially make me transform.
And isn't that then an example of the universe coming in at the right time, in the right place, in the right way?
Yeah.
And at some point, when people do things for you like that, you find I think I've found myself there, and I just want to say thank you. Yeah,
positively. And this idea of God knowing how many hairs we have on our head, and having a plan for my to prosper and not to harm me. I sort of in that moment said, wow, Gina, you know, thank you. And then she prayed for me. And after she got done praying, this is really interesting, she said, now Jim, you're going to have to hire somebody. You're not going to be able to do this on your own. Yeah. And I said, do you mean like a life coach? And she said, no, you are a life coach, Jim. Wow. You are a life coach. That's why you have to do this. And she had no idea of the things that had been going on in my mind about. Anyhow, so long story short, or a long story long, I made a commitment in that moment. I said, Gina, within 9 months, which is the amount of time it takes to create a new life, They said, within 9 months, I'm going to lose 100 pounds, and I'm going to get certified in a coaching curriculum. And within 9 months, I'd lost 115 pounds and was finishing training as a coactive life coach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the coaching. So I've been coaching for about 3 years, and I love it. I feel like it's some of the most meaningful work I've ever done.
And it's so wonderful to have that experience, because when you're coaching someone, it's really good to have that example. You know, like, I went through this. I know how you feel. Instead of somebody never having that experience and really not understanding the reality of being obsessed with food, and not really want to face what it is. What is that obsession with the food?
Yeah, you know, and
that's
for
one
me,
thing.
And for me, because most of my clients, they're not food related, but what I can relate beautifully to is a person who has a really great life. When they look at their pie chart, you know, 75%, they look at this and they're really pleased. But I think most folks have one or more areas of their life where they just feel like they can't get traction, or they can't, or they're looking for something and they can't quite put their finger on it. And so, having been in that position and come through it, I think most importantly, Roberta, I think it breeds compassion.
Yes, definitely. And it's also nice to have a coach, because there are people out there that are afraid of giving you feedback, or giving you advice.
Yeah.
They would much rather not say anything, which is mostly, it's not a good thing. But a coach usually calls you on it. You have to talk about your, the wins and the frustrations and challenges, and really feeling good about yourself. I know I use the term walking in integrity. Having that feeling that you're really doing what you should be doing. And there's a lot of things about you that I observe as someone who's seen you play. I've seen you with the Me and Thee. I also know you as a person. I know you were weren't you in the eye business? Yeah,
so for the last 20 years, I've made part of my career in the optical industry, and it was sort of very, very part-time with that now, but that was a trade that sort of fell in my lap. A quick word on the feedback piece to clients. I sort of am governed by this quote that my mentor used to say, which is that truth without love is harsh, but love without truth is weak.
That's
very so I think that, and this is the same, that's how Gina was with me during that moment, and how I try to be with my clients is try to always have a mixture of truth and love in everything that I say, so that the truth is never harsh, but the love isn't weak. So, so I'm fortunate enough to have had some things choose me. The most important things, I think, tend to choose us.
Yes. And isn't that funny? And when you're thinking about certain things, I know I have this thoughts are things mentality. And if you're thinking about all the right things, they do start coming to you. And I'm wondering, I know our audience might want to understand your connection to music and how you use that in your life too. I'd like to know.
So music has been a part of my life as long as I can remember. My brothers, two of my brothers played the guitar, and my sister is a singer, and they were both singers, and my father was the church organist, and so on and so forth. So I grew up in a very musical home. When I was a little boy, my brothers had guitars and wouldn't let me touch them because these are not toys, Jimmy. They're musical instruments. And so I begged my father to buy me a guitar, and my sister. This is going to seem like a rabbit trail, but it's not. My sister had severe scoliosis, and so she wore a brace in the 70s that made it so that she couldn't play her clarinet anymore. And so my father traded in her clarinet and bought me a guitar. And I took 2 lessons and I hated it.
Oh.
I hated it. My teacher smelled kind of funky. He wore overalls and he didn't wear shoes, and it was just a
It
weird,
just wasn't
it was just a
working?
weird thing. It was a weird thing. But my father was a Navy chief who would end sentences with the phrase "end of report," and so in the 6th grade, my father said, "We've bought you a guitar, and you will take lessons until the end of the 8th grade. End of report."
Oh.
Right? So the idea was, my father was 6'4" with hands the size of small dogs. Nobody ever spoke after end of report. So I every Saturday morning, kicking and screaming, I went to the Haverhill Music Center, and I had my guitar lesson. And then the last day of 8th grade, I thought I'll never have to pick up a guitar ever again. Well, lo and behold, my first day of my freshman year of high school, the kids at the bus stop had guitar cases.
Ah.
It turns out music was cool in high school. It wasn't cool in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew all the chords, and they all had electric guitars. And so now this whole world opened up for me. And my best friend, musical friend and otherwise, throughout high school was a guy named Dave McCormick. And literally every day after school, we would spend hours at his house playing the guitar and writing songs. And it's just something that has carried over.
So that goes back to high school.
Yeah, it goes back to high school. Yeah, I'm 44. I put out my first album when I was 25, released it on cassette at 25, back when we were listening to cassette tapes, and came out on CD in 1996. And I just released my 5th album last year, entitled Further from the Tree, and it's available on iTunes and CD Baby.
I have that.
Do you have it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
So I'm fortunate enough that when people who have been very successful are asked the question, what advice would you give somebody who's just starting out? The advice that they always give is don't give up. And what they mean is don't give up. And I'm not the greatest guitarist, I'm not the greatest singer or songwriter, but I didn't stop. I never stopped. And as a result, I'm getting to go all over the world. I was just in Barcelona playing a couple months ago, and yeah, very fortunate
I saw
that way.
on
Yeah.
Facebook, yes.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the more you practice anything,
Yeah.
the better you are.
Yeah, there's
And
no
you
question.
don't you find out that if something isn't working, you just move on to something else?
Well, I think that part of anything being creative is being honest with yourself and appreciating a handful of skilled opinions. Just because it feels good, it doesn't mean it is good. And so some objectivity. So years ago, gosh, 6 or 7 years ago now, I was with my dear friend Rachel Taylor, who is in Nashville now. She's somebody that I write songs with. But I played something for her, and I said, "What do you think of this?" And she said, "Here's your problem, Jim." She said, you write great lyrics, but you don't write melodies that make me want to listen to them. And I thought, wow, that's so funny, and it stung like feedback stings sometimes, but it's made me a better writer of melody.
Isn't that great that
Yeah.
people are really helping you like that?
Well, people are honest, and
Great.
I try to offer that in return. But so that whole thing about practicing, not only practicing, but strategically welcoming certain skilled voices. I don't want advice from everybody. I want advice from people who can do it better than me, right?
Absolutely,
So-
absolutely. Well, you do have a soothing voice. Every time I've heard you sing, it's like you just want to hear more.
Thanks. Yeah.
And I don't know if you feel like doing anything.
I just happen to have a guitar sitting
happen to have
sitting
that
right here,
guitar.
just randomly. I don't know how that.
I don't know.
happened,
I don't know how that happened. And I have a feeling that Skippy is one of your biggest fans.
Yeah, Skippy hangs out. It's not unusual for Skippy to sit on my lap if I'm on the couch or sit next to me. And initially, he didn't understand that putting his head underneath my hand to get patted while I was playing was. He thought that was a good idea, but.
Well, music had been very effective in my own dog's life. I had
Is
a
that-
golden retriever, and my husband was a music teacher.
Yeah.
So we had classical music playing all the time. And when we left the house, we left the music on, and I could swear that made a big
Yeah.
difference in his temperament
Yeah.
and his calmness. This was, a golden retriever isn't exactly a stress machine, but sometimes they can get stressed, or they get bored, or they get the hot spots on their legs from boredom. And I have heard that music is good for dogs.
We had a little problem a couple weeks ago. We left Skippy home, and the Grateful Dead channel was playing on XM, and all the wine bottles were empty, and he was passed out in a tie-dye T-shirt when we got home. So we're trying to be selective. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, you naughty dog. But
recovered well.
He recovered well, as we do. But this song, I'll do a song for you off the new album called All's Not Lost, and just a little encouragement. There are two kinds of love, the kind you want and the kind you get. There's the first one that you ever had. It's the one you can't forget, but you can't go there. There's a distance in your memory of a heartache laid aside, and you don't regret the pain you felt, and you are not sure why, but you can't leave there. But all's not lost, and you're not lost at all. All's not lost, and you're not lost at all. There are two kinds of lies, some you tell, some you believe, and you will rid yourself of both one day, and you will be relieved, but you don't know now. It's that story you're repeating, it's a picture in a frame, it's like a car crash, you can't look away. You may never be the same, but I won't go there. 'Cause all's not lost, and you're not lost at all. All's not lost, and you're not lost at all. Ooh. Put me in your suitcase, stored beneath the bed, and you will wipe the dust off someday to say the things you wish you'd said, but I won't be there. 'Cause all's not lost, and I'm not lost at all. All's not lost, and I'm not lost at all. Ooh, all's not lost, and I'm not lost at all.
Nice. We have a little applause in the studio here for you.
Thanks.
This is great. I'm getting so much out of this
thank you
whole
so much. This is great.
time with you, which I've always wanted to do.
It's fun, right?
It is fun.
It's fun. And we get to do it in front of a bunch of cameras with a bunch of people hanging out with us, right?
Yeah, I bumped
Hopefully also
into
getting
you
something.
in the grocery store. I've bumped into you at concerts.
Yeah.
I've really,
Yeah.
It's so nice to just get to know someone and
Indeed.
understand their love of their animal and their
Yeah.
love of life.
Mhm. It's a good life.
And all of those things. Any advice that you'd like to give our audience from all of the things that you've done?
Oh gosh, I mean, for me, my faith is wildly important to me. I try not to make decisions without praying about them. I became aware of the story of Jesus when I was 8 years old, and without being too preachy, nothing. He's never let me down, ever once. And for me, the thing about faith is, you know, people set a precedent. And so if you had a friend, for example, who lied to you, if you had a dear friend who told a lie, you caught him in a lie, you might go, oh my gosh, that's out of character, right? And give them a pass or work through that. And then if they lied to you a couple more times, you'd start to think to yourself, gosh, this person is setting a precedent of being a liar or being unreliable. And for me, as it relates to my relationship with God, he just has set a precedent of getting it right. And so I don't know if that's really advice. I don't know if it's so much it's advice, but I would say that for people to be able to explore that part of their life, even though they may have been let down by people, and maybe they may have been let down by institutions and that sort of thing. God has set a precedent of never letting me down. And so that's, you know, the idea of having something to offer can't come up without that coming up. And then beyond that, I just, for people to, my longing for people is for them to discover what their mission is, and to release themselves, to be engaged in it. Everybody has something to offer. And for a person to no longer see themselves as broken, but to see themselves as a person who is on the planet with a mission and a purpose. And getting engaged in that mission and purpose, for me, is huge. So
it is huge. And just so I don't get this wrong, on your website you have encourage, inspire, and transform.
Yeah.
And I think that was very interesting to me, because it's important to encourage yourself and others. That inspiration comes from lots of places, and I'm sure Skippy is part of your inspiration. People are always thinking about love and connection and significance and all of those things. And I just want to recognize your ability to be you, as you said when we met this morning. It's like people should be able to be themselves.
Well, Oscar Wilde has that famous quote where he said, "Be yourself at all times. Everyone else is taken." You know, and a word to, as far as, you know, Skippy, what are you doing? You gonna come back up?
Skippy has been amazing.
Come here. So St. Paul wrote about, he said, St. Paul wrote that all creation sings God's praises so that man is without excuse. And I don't think there's any question that that animals reflect God, and you know, we're in creation. And so Skippy's job is to point us to the things that are good and divine and right. And
I think it's great. And I guess there's no mistake that this dog is very special.
Oh, he's a good,
really, Skippy,
he's a
it's
good
been
boy.
a pleasure to have you on our show. Can you shake hands?
Yeah, he's working on that. He'll come over and sit with me and give
come
you a
on
little
over
love.
here. And I'm going to give my guests my book, Good Boy Jesse. I should show it to the audience.
Good Boy Jesse.
Yes.
By Roberta Chadis.
And it's a lovely story about my golden retriever.
Thank you so much.
I always like to give
What
that
a
away.
dog, yeah.
And I just want to thank you so very much for being on Dog Health News. I don't know if I'm going to give Skippy back.
Oh, I'm pretty sure you will.
I don't know. I think he likes me.
He may like you.
And thank you very much. We'll be back with another show soon. Thanks for watching. And thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Roberta.
Okay. And thank you, Skippy.